Hi everyone, it's your girl Jacqueline Belle, and thank you yet again for watching another episode of the Divorcee Diaries. Today, I'm gonna talk to you about the four things that I feel I did well while going through my marriage that I'm glad that I had done. So I'll highlight those four first. So for any of you that are thinking of getting married or about to get married or want to get married one day in your life or get married again, here's some of my wisdom to keep things in perspective, I guess I would say. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to mention that I did right away is at the beginning of any marriage is the wedding itself. So for my wedding, I spent the total expense for the wedding was $15,000. Now, I think for some that'll sound like a lot, and for others it'll sound so cheap, and I get it. But to put it in perspective, when I got married in 2016, the average wedding cost about $35,000. $35,000, okay? I'm way too practical for that. So $35,000 was not something that I wanted to partake in. So I measured into my own hands to create the dream wedding that I wanted, but also to be realistic with my budget. So I got married in Hawaii and did a destination wedding and really cut back on some things that I feel are not necessary, such as wedding favors or snacks, like a buffet of snacks before the actual wedding reception, things like that. Those things were not that important to me, but it was very important to me to spend time and money in getting our families to get to know each other and things like that. But as far as wedding expenses, everything was kept very simple. I made my own bouquets for my bridesmaids and the boutonnieres for the groomsmen. So it kept things really, really cost effective in that way. So it really didn't go over $15,000 at all, which I was really happy about because as you can see, it was still a beautiful day and it didn't have to break the bank. And I think that's really important, especially because I know some people might go into debt over those things. So that is one thing that I would say I'm glad that I did as a married person. The second thing that I did or did not do, as in this case, that I'm glad that I didn't do, is I didn't change my last name. No, I did not change my last name. My last name is still my last name, but I keep it behind the scenes for privacy reasons. Jacqueline Belle is my name. It's my first name. Jacqueline Belle is actually my first name. It's a very long name, but it's not my last name, and I never changed my last name, nor do I ever plan on it. So because I did not change my last name, I did not have to change my passport, I did not have to change my driver's license, I did not have to change any other legal documents at all. I didn't have to change my work name and my work email and all of that, because that can get really hairy. I didn't have to do any of that. And when I got divorced, I didn't have to do any of that again. So that was something that I was very grateful for. Made the process a lot smoother. I really don't plan on changing my last name ever. It's a long process, and if you want to reverse that, it's another long process. So some people don't mind it, and that's great, and that's completely up to you. But for myself, it made the process of getting divorced that much easier. The third thing that my ex-husband and I did that I'm really glad about was that we kept our accounts separate. Now, if anybody watches, who do I love? Oh, what's her name? Oh gosh. Oh. Susie Orman, never mind. I got it. I found it. Thank you. Okay. So for those of you that are familiar with Susie Orman, I'm a big fan of Susie Orman. Really a self-made woman who gives great financial advice for women. She even affirmed what I did, even though I felt bad about it. I remember asking people, what do you do as a married couple with your finances? Because I've been very independent my whole life, and I've always taken care of my own finances, and it made me feel very out of sorts and uncomfortable just having having to take over both finances and get things kind of merged. For me, it wasn't right for me. And I'm so glad that I did that. So glad that I did that, because it made it a lot easier just to kind of wipe your hands and separate ways, I would say. For my husband and I, we made somewhat similar income, so it wasn't too big of a thing. But even our relationship while we were together, one made more money, one made less money, and how we've gone about our relationship in that case, it was always okay with us. We split all of our bills, and that was what worked for us. And although we both had each other on our accounts, so for example, right after getting married, that was like a big thing for me. If something happened to me, goodness forbid, that my spouse would have access to my finances right away in case they needed it. And that was important, and that was something that we had done, but we always kept it separate. I had no desire to look into his account or his retirement account or whatever, and he had no desire to look into mine. And we kept it separate, and we always knew that we would just utilize our one card that we had together, and then split the cost that way. And it worked out really well, and it made for a lot easier of a transition when we did part ways. So that is one thing that I would recommend, is keeping your finances separate. And that's okay, ladies. That is okay. In fact, I encourage you to do it, okay? Take care of your finances yourself. You'll be great. Don't worry about it. All right, and the last thing I wanted to say that I'm really glad that I did while I was married was being able to buy a house. So I was able to buy a house while I was married, and I think in many of those cases, it was actually quite funny. I bought a house, I closed on a house 6 days before I got married. It all just happened all at once. It was kind of crazy in that way. But I will say that was the best purchase I had made as a married person, because when you are married or when you are with someone else, you have you should hopefully have dual income. And that way you're paying less, essentially, because you both are halving or sharing the expenses in general, right? Living expenses, so your food, your utilities, things like that, but also your living expenses, the home that you live in, the car that you drive, things like that. So there is there's not as much of a burden, I would say, as having to go. I'm speaking from having lived by myself in the past as well, and now, where you absorb all of those costs, and that's okay too. That is just fine. It just makes it a little bit better when you only have to pay for half of the rent as opposed to all of the rent, or half of the mortgage as opposed to a full mortgage, right? So that's something that was really good, that I purchased, because only 2.5 years later, when my ex-husband and I did end up selling the house, it grew by $60,000 in just 2.5 years. And we're both able to make a profit. And like I said before, like how we entered our marriage, we were able to really half all of that and settle it amicably. So that was really good. And without that house, I would not have had assets. I would not have walked away with any money in my bank. That was added on to what the marriage to what I had for my marriage. So for me, that was a door opener. That was what really helped me to heal as well, because I was able to take this amazing 30-year-old trip, traveling the world by myself. And I really am so happy that I had done that. And I don't think I would have thought about doing it, or had done it the way that I had done it. Because as you can see from my previous video on solo traveling, how I did it, on my 30th birthday, I did it pretty darn big. And I definitely have the sale of my house to thank, even though I didn't, of course, spend $30,000 on it, but it gave me the comfort knowing that I could indulge in myself because I deserved it and I had the assets to do it, right? So those are some of the 4 things that I am so glad I did in my marriage that worked for me and that helped me move forward, right? I wasn't I wasn't in debt for my wedding. I didn't have to change my name back to my maiden name. I didn't have to mess with accounts, you know, and having to divvy it up, right? I just took my money, this is what I did, this is what I made. You take your money, this is what you did, that's what you made, what have you. And finally with my house that we had purchased, walking away afterwards knowing that at least I had something to show afterwards, after all was said and done, after, you know, your life kind of blows up, that there was at least something. That was actually one thing I held on to, was like, at least I have something to say that came out of being married for 2.5 years. So that is, in a nutshell, some hopeful resources that I think will help some of you, and will hopefully be, will speak to some of you that might have been in similar circumstances and maybe have done similar things that I have done as a divorcee. So I wish you all very well. I thank you so much for watching another episode of the Divorcee Diaries. And if you like what you saw, please leave a thumbs up. Also, please subscribe. Please subscribe. And lastly, please leave me a comment below if you would like to hear more of any said topic, if you want to know more about all other things that I did, how I bought a house, or how I managed my finances, something like that, let me know. I'd be more than happy to share those with you in my next vlog. So thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.